Hello, everyone. Today we have a professor, a scientific engineering kind of professor. He's going to talk about biomass utilization in rural India. It's a very interesting topic. It's a very powerful topic. We have Professor Vishwanath Dalvi with us. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Professor.
Right. Uh, so, uh, hi. Uh, so the topic is using biomass to reinvigorate the rural Indian economy. So reinvigorate. I reinvigorate because something put it to sleep, and that was 200 years of colonization. So the idea is uh, actually not even mine. The idea is Mahatma Gandhi's.
Okay,
And
everyone, your voice is not very clear. Let me pause it and see if we can fix it. Okay, we are back. So please continue. You were saying you want to reinvigorate rural India biomass utilization because it was put to sleep by colonial rule. Okay, please
yeah,
continue.
so um, and this is a thought that was articulated by Mahatma Gandhi long time ago. He envisaged an India of self-sufficient village republics, self-sufficient village republics. And they would mostly produce everything that they consume and little surplus that they would trade with other villages around. So self-sufficient village republics. India actually went down the road of centralized heavy industry, which, um, for good or bad, it has brought us here. And here is where the rural economy is still asleep. People are still migrating from the villages to the towns. And we have this weird um, uh, state now where the villages are emptying out and the towns are full to bursting. So there is a asymmetry, an imbalance in ultimately power. The imbalance is in power. The villages cannot compete. What do the villages produce? The villages produce food mostly. They don't produce much else, mostly food. And other than fresh fruits and vegetables, the villages cannot compete with um, with the cities for even for food grains because the cities can import food grains from Russia, Ukraine, the United States, Argentina, Australia, where large mechanized farms produce food grains at a rate that Indian villages simply cannot keep up with. So now how do we give power back to the villages? And the power essentially means economic power. How do we send power back to the villages? So first, let's look at what the villages have. And when we look at India, we see uh, a fertile land, fruitful land, a land dark with crops. Sujalam, Sufalam, Malay, Shitalam. So that's a national song. So we see this extraordinarily uh, fruitful land, and we see something else. The most fruitful parts of the country, which generate massive amounts of food grains, also torch their agricultural residue. They burn it, and it creates pollution in Delhi. Every year this happens. There is uh, there have been attempts to monetize the agricultural residue. It's going along. Uh, but can we do something? to more quickly turn the agricultural residue into something that the cities will pay for, and thereby substantially rebalance the power imbalance that currently exists between the cities and the villages. And if we could do that, we would see a cascade of benefits. And an important benefit would be that people would not need to leave their homes uh, to earn a decent income and to have dignified labor. They could do it while living within their villages. More importantly, women would not have to leave their children to earn money by producing marketable products. Uh, now, um, how do we do that? Uh, so you have agricultural residue. You can, if you look at a chart showing the productivity of Indian crops and the world's standard of productivity of the same crops, you will see that they fall on a straight line. It's quite extraordinary. I would actually like to share my screen and show you that uh, thing. So
Okay, the screen is up. Let's go, Professor.
yeah, um, so this is what I was saying about the sheer scale of the Indian landmass. So you will see the Indian landmass superimposed on a map of Europe, and you will see how Kashmir is near Norway when Kanyakumari is already hitting Africa. If Gujarat is near Ireland, then Assam is already in Belarus or Ukraine. So you see the sheer scale of the Indian landmass. And on the figures on the right show you that we have the second largest arable land in the world in this landmass, and the largest area of irrigated land in the world, more than the United States. So we are exceptionally blessed with agricultural resources. And so the primary energy use in India is 32 exajoules, which is 10 raised to 18 joules, a massive number. And this is how it is distributed. So we'll be coming now. This is an old map, but and of course this pie has grown bigger over the last decade, but it still has it's indicative of something very large, very large. So you see, coal occupies pride of place, and biomass still occupies about 24%. And although biomass imposes only 24%, 70% of the population depends on this quarter of the pie. This is the figure I was talking about. What you do is you take average Indian productivity in tons per hectare and plot it on the y-axis. You plot the highest productivity in the world, and you do it across crops: rice, wheat, potatoes, tomatoes, soya, sugarcane, soybeans, the whole thing. And you will see a straight line with a very good correlation coefficient. And the y value is dot 2. Very easy to remember. So Indian productivity is half what it could be, half as much as it could. So that means India is already self-sufficient in food grains. We don't need to import. In fact, we export. There
So,
is still potential, nevertheless, to double that production. So we are self-sufficient. We could double the production. So you think it another way. For the same production, we could halve the land use. And the surplus land we could use for something saleable. Saleable. So food grains are saleable, but there's a glut of food grains. So maybe you could sell something else that the cities need. So that thing that the cities need that we could sell would be the crop residue. So we produce 500 million tons, an unimaginable number. Uh, and 140 billion of which is surplus. So the surplus crop residue is 2.5 exajoules. And India's primary energy, so it represents nearly 10% of the energy use of India. So it's a significant fraction. Even now, it is a significant fraction. And what we do is we burn about half of it, more than half of it. We burn. So about 5% of India's energy use, we just torch and cause all kinds of problems. So if you come back to this pie again, what we see is this is the crop residue energy content, and this is it's 6.48 exajoules, and we only need 1.22 exajoules, and we burn 1.66 exajoules. So we are burning something very valuable. And if you could stop that, and if you could monetize it, things would become very, um, very pretty, very lovely, very quickly. So let's have a 50% agri boost, which is not technologically not unachievable. It is not technology. This is not a technologically insurmountable problem to get a 50% agricultural boost. So you have 9 exajoules per year of residue, 1.66 is burned, 0.86 is available, and you have 13.5 exajoules per year additional residue, which is 4.5 exajoules per year additional residue. So 13.5 exajoules per year total, 4.5 exajoules per year additional residue. So this will correspond to what is burned, what is available, and the additional residue would constitute 22% of Indian energy use. And India's energy imports are 23% of Indian energy use. This is a large number. It's a large number. Now, what about this 6.48 exajoules? What is it used for? It is used for fodder, rural cooking, hot water, and heating, primarily on wood and dung chullas, like this. And the efficiency is 10%. The efficiency is 10%. What it means is it is not very different from doing this.
true.
This
It's just
is
a
the
bit
same as doing this.
it's a
Because
bit controlled. It's a bit controlled. It's in the home.
it's a bit controlled in the home, but it is just as bad.
Yeah, it's
Because
just that.
all
Yeah.
of that is you're still throwing away 90% of it.
Yes.
So one thing we can do, and what we are doing in ICT, not me directly, but people around me, is they are making improved cook stoves. So you can actually, if you look at the cook stoves on the right, you can see that they burn this biomass, which burn as well as LPG or methane fired stoves, which is quite extraordinary. So they have a 40% thermal efficiency. 40% thermal efficiency. So that means you can free up 4.86 additional exajoules by using better cook stoves. Now, when you go here, that is 37% of Indian energy use. So what do we do with it? What do we do with this, all this biomass? So one thing we could just burn it, but in this case, we'll make electricity. So this is very attractive, prima facie, established technology and infrastructure. Challenges, of course, of gathering the biomass to a central coal-fired power plant or central biomass-fired power plant. Because decentralized combustion is very inefficient, expensive because of economies of scale. We are working on steam engines to change this. But right now, let's take this as a given. And the more important problem is the nutrients in the biomass, they vitrify, they become glass.
Yes.
And they're lost. So 11.88 exajoules per year is 100 gigawatt at 25% efficiency and some amount of CO2 as well. So that is 31%, which is 31% of India's greenhouse gas emissions, which have been avoided by using this biomass. So, but if you do an economic evaluation, this is a back of the envelope calculation, but still, a lot of numbers are going to come up, but we'll just run through them quickly. Take it as a given. You don't have time to examine them individually. But if you go all the way down to the bottom, you will find that you actually lose money. You lose money from the biomass because um, because of how much the biomass costs. If you just take the cost of the biomass and the cost of the power it generates, you are still throwing away money. It is better than burning it as it is done now, but still throwing away money. So we don't want to do that. We can try gasification, which a lot of people have tried. Again, gasification is you supply, it used to be called destructive distillation, which is, it's not quite destructive distillation. It's also, that's the next thing. Gasification is, you burn biomass with a small deficit of oxygen so that it becomes carbon monoxide, not completely oxidized, and you oxidize it afterwards. It is very difficult to. Lot of gunky, tarry materials form, it's all horrible. But if you could do it and you did the economic evaluation, it would still lose you. It is not worth turning biomass into electricity, no matter what the efficiency. What you could do instead is pyrolysis, we take biomass and then you make gases which are burned to supply the heat for generating the 500 degrees. You make bio-oil, which can be upgraded to transportation fuel, and you make biochar, which can be used for soil conditioning and carbon sequestration. And there are many pyrolyzers that are working, including in ICT. ICT also has a big program in pyrolysis. So you have some CO2 sequestered. It is 37% of Indian GHG emissions. But if you do the economic analysis, you get a substantial benefit of $31 billion a year. So pyrolysis is very wonderful. Pyrolysis is very wonderful. Can there be something better than pyrolysis? Form of biomethanation, where just the biogas of your of the 1960s, but intensified. You don't have one pot to do the biogas in, you do it in two pots. And so part of these processes you carry out in one pot, and the methanogenesis you carry out in a separate pot. And there are great benefits of that. The sludge particularly still contains the bionutrients which are in the bioavailable form. It does not act on lignin, so there is a significant loss of heating value. But if you take again the economic analysis, and you do the full economic analysis very quickly, you are looking at $53.4 billion per year. You're looking at $53.4 billion a year. So, to put this in perspective, biomass has the potential to generate $54 billion a year in wealth that goes directly to the grassroots, literally as well as figuratively, to the grassroots. The raw revenue is $70 billion a year. 70 billion. India is projected to import $113 billion of crude in this year. We could offset that. We could offset 70% of it. Not 30% of it. So we can offset 50% of crude imports and generate enough wealth to pay for the rest. And so we have a readily realizable potential of about 12 exajoules, which can offset 35% of Indian greenhouse gas emissions and pay for India's crude oil imports. It is contingent on good farm practices and better stoves. But the major challenges of collecting biomass for processing, which can be overcome using another innovation, organizational innovation that is very successful in India, which is the farmers cooperative. So you could imagine every farm having these two-stage biogas digesters in which they put their agricultural residue and they pipe the gas to a central location for upgrading. Very similar to how Amul does with their milk. Decentralized farmers generate milk and they bring it to a central location for upgrading and sale. So technologies that can be decentralized are, so this is an imperatively decentralized yet profitable technology. So it imperatively puts money into the pockets of small landholders. So bioharvesting can be made lucrative for farmers. And this is, we were established in 1933. You will see that the postgraduate students outnumber the undergraduate students. It is one of the very few places in India or maybe even the world where this is true. We have 7 technology department, about 100 faculty, and we produce a massive number of publications every year, more than 100 PhDs a year. We are remarkably proud. So you can't spend a day in India without using something made by an ICT. And this is going to be progressively more true as these various technologies become mainstream. And we haven't talked about our solar thermal endeavor, which is another approach to the same destination. So thank you. I'll stop sharing screen and we'll have a chat. So,
okay. Thank you, Professor. I very much like the idea. I have written very clearly many times that our first energy priority is to reduce our dependence on imported fuel.
Yeah.
Because we are importing it for transportation. We are importing now with the LPG chulhas for cooking, and the LPG demand for cooking is going to rise because LPG is much more convenient than the inefficient 10% thermal efficiency chulha that you showed us. It's less convenient. So as incomes rise, the demand for cooking, right now, people can't afford the cylinder, but as incomes rise, people will be able to afford the cylinder, and they will want the convenience of LPG. Maybe you can shift them to electric cooking, but electricity demand anyway is tough to handle. So we may not be able to do it like that. So we will be stuck with importing LPG. I mean, we don't, we'll be importing fossil fuels. So it's not only imports, it's also fossil fuels. And if we can do it with our own biomass, then that is killing two birds with one stone, imports as well as GHG emissions. Okay. It's a very, very interesting idea. One thing you sort of passed over, which is when you said it vitrifies and it becomes silica. Well, that silica has a market. There is a market.
It's not, yeah, yeah. So you're right. You're right. It does have a market. It just not. It doesn't actually become silica. It does become oxides,
Yes.
but they are not. Um, so we're not talking about the rice husk which burns and makes silica. The regular, say, wheat straw, they contain a lot of potassium and zinc and other things, which if they vitrify, it's difficult to get at them afterwards.
Yeah, okay. I went to Bangladesh like 14 years ago. I had gone and I did, we had set up a rural electricity generation facility using biomass husk, rice husk, because that's what they eat in Bangladesh. And what this small facility said, I am making money because I can sell the glass. I can sell the silica. Is using rice. So we have a lot of rice husk in India now.
Yeah, all of
The
this.
rice residue. So if we talk about the rice husk, is there in India. So it's not maybe the dominant. I don't know what the share is, but it's enough so that we cannot simply ignore the biomass becoming input into the glass. The demand for glass is also going to rise in India. So that's
Yes,
an
yes, that's true.
important input as to be not ignored. So that's one point. And that's actually the other point is you did mention biochar and you did
Yeah.
mention soil amendments. Now, if we are going to have better agriculture, which
Mhm.
is not going to rely only on imported, in the end, it's fossil fuels that's behind our fertilizer,
Yeah.
right? It's fossil fuels underlying the fertilizer. So, in one form or the other, that's what you are using. And if we are
Yes.
thinking about better ways, we should think more about. Gorish, can you just hold on for 30 minutes? We are running a bit late on the previous one. Okay. So, we should think about the use of this biochar. This is again something that is known around the world, but it's not yet widely practiced. And this is biochar is a very important organic fertilizer.
It is.
Is,
Yes.
it is, and its importance should not be simply overlooked. You did mention it, but you didn't emphasize it. So I'm just emphasizing
Yeah.
the two things that
So
you
there has
mentioned.
been a
Uh,
so it's little bit about biochar. It's not the silver bullet that
No, 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 it's not silver
we
bullet.
would.
Nothing is a silver
Uh,
bullet. But what I'm saying is that I would like to not neglect these two sources of
yeah, yeah,
revenue and, that can be used to further make because the costs, you've calculated once you are out in practical places in the rural areas, the costs are not exactly the same as you were in a
yeah.
lab.
It's not even that.
Yeah.
What is worse is if you try to set up this thing as a entrepreneurial venture, farmers will prefer to burn their crop than sell it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
So those are
unless
the
unless you can demonstrate that every every rupee of profit is partly going into their pockets,
yeah.
which
So
is why cooperatives is a more sustainable way forward
well,
than entrepreneurship.
yeah. So fortunately, the union government is setting up FPOs, farmer productivity organizations,
Yeah,
So we are getting, it's a form of a cooperative. They call it FPO, but it is a cooperative. It's not legally a cooperative. Maybe I don't know what's the legal structure, but certainly, as I mentioned to you, I'm involved with people in Lift Up India, and we were thinking only of the small towns, but we have extended it to think of the rural areas surrounding that small town, so the taluka. And we would love to collaborate with you in using some of the thinking that's going on in your group of friends in these
Yeah.
places and see whether we can actually implement some of these ideas. Now, the cook stoves, the better and improved cook stoves, the World Bank is heavily, heavily, heavily trying to,
Yeah.
right? But the
Yeah.
thing is that as
Lot of
great as the
problems.
World Bank is, and I've been involved with it for 31 years as a short-term consultant and with the energy people, I think local efforts are actually capable of doing a better job because we can be more nimble and we can adapt ourselves to the local
Yeah.
circumstances. So I wouldn't say that, look, it's a done deal. It's not a done deal. We still have LPG cooking and we
No.
still need to get out of LPG. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
heresy to say that in India because everybody thinks LPG is good. It is good. I'm not against LPG at all. It has really helped the women who cook, and it has helped the children who, the chulha, the smoke from the chulha is very bad for your health, very bad for everything. It's a total waste of energy because you're only 10% efficient. So if we can find some ways to do the cooking with
So
biomass,
we
that
we
would be
are
great.
we are actually looking at solar cookers, which are more not the old solar cookers that you
Yeah.
imagine when you say
Yeah.
solar cooker, but something that can generate a temperature of 250 degrees centigrade
Yeah.
very quickly,
Yeah. Okay.
and
So
which can
what?
be maintained by a family.
Yeah.
So
So
that,
what
that
I
that's
Yeah,
a lot of
what I had
ideas.
said
So
last
that's
time to you, and what I'll say again, is that we should not just look at rural areas using the rural resources. We can also see whether the small commercial establishments, we shouldn't just
yeah,
focus on households. It's very important
that's right.
to start looking at the small commercial establishments like the
Correct.
chai
Absolutely right.
dukan or the dhaba, all these places which
Yes.
use thermal heat, which we can
Yes.
supply with these fuels. And if we can do
Yes.
that, then if we can get collaboration with you on that aim also. I'm not saying let's not look at rural, but let's look at where the small town, small scale commercial thermal heat is,
Yeah.
because you are providing basically thermal heat, whether you are going through.
Yes.
Okay, and solar thermal, of course, is in India large scale is very, solar thermal has not been used at all now,
No, no, very, very,
be-
very.
because
It's not meant for last year.
yeah, but one of the thoughts which we have been discussing with various people is that we can use solar thermal to say in small scale commercial production of prepared food, like somebody
Yeah.
who's making biscuits, okay, at a low
Yes.
scale.
Absolutely.
Now they need thermal heat, right?
Yes.
And whether they need it for oven or for the oil of whatever, they need thermal heat.
Yeah.
So if we
Thermal
can
heat.
pipe
Absolutely.
in the thermal heat and then have regular fuel as a supplemental to peak top, make it reach this. So maybe you can't reach the temperature with the thermal alone. Then you have supplemental heat, which is needed,
Supplementary fire.
right?
Yes. That's right.
And
Absolutely.
also, and there are many uses of solar thermal, which are sort of very exciting 20, 30 years ago, but people have failed and they feel depressed about it. But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, we can have this discussion offline. But for the moment, I'd say thank you so much for your thinking about these issues. And let's see if we can get something practical done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And sometime in the later, I mean offline maybe, remind me to tell you about um, where this biochar thing comes from. I'll something very interesting. I'll
Okay.
tell you later
Fine.
on.
We'll keep
We're
in
out of
touch.
time.
We'll keep in
Yeah.
touch. But for the moment, I think this is an eye opener that what is causing pollution can actually create production. Substitute.
That's right.
I'm a salesman in words, so production instead of pollution. Right?
That's very good.
Because I like to say things in 3 words, 4 words or less. So here we are
Yeah,
talking
that's a
production,
wonderful skill. Like a
production,
poet, actually.
production instead of pollution, right?
Yeah.
You
Yes,
have,
yes.
uh,
Profit.
get-
Profit instead of pollution.
well, profit is difficult, but production is production. Who makes
Yeah,
money? That's
that's
separate. You're replacing pollution with production. Well, that
yes.
is a social goal. And then, of course, it has to be viable and so on. So let's go with this idea production instead of pollution. Uh,
Yes.
let's
Yes, let's
make
go
it
with that.
happen. So, good. Let's see what we can do, and maybe we'll come back in 3 or 4 months and talk about it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be yes.
All right. So, thank you, Prof, for taking your valuable time. And next time, maybe you can include some of your students in the discussion so that we
Yeah,
can
sure.
hear
I
from
would
them.
like that very much.
And that's an
Yes.
innovation that I've just introduced, that we actually have young people to come and also speak along with their professor.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then they,
That's a great innovation.
so you can see some of my videos, like the one you just went into last
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
They were
That
all
was
young. They are not my
great
students.
fun.
They are young people whom I have done Vidpeds with, and they actually were told in advance what's going to be said, and they come prepared.
Okay.
They talk, and then we have a panel discussion. I think it's a way to
Yeah.
empower the young and make them learn about things, and gives them the confidence to talk. So it's a training for them, and it's also empowering them.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, that's right.
so let's end the talk here now, and we can chat a little bit afterwards offline.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody. I'll be back soon with another young person or an expert. Okay, bye.